Assalamu alaikum, I'm Aisha and you're watching Samar News. Here are today's headlines. Former Honduran President Juan Orlando Hernandez has been released from a US prison after a pardon from President Donald Trump. Hernandez had been serving a 45-year sentence on drug and firearms charges. His release comes just days after Honduras's presidential election, where Trump-backed candidate Nasri Asfura is in a tight race with Salvador Nasrallah. The White House has defended a US admiral's decision to conduct multiple strikes on an alleged Venezuelan drug smuggling vessel in September, saying he had Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth's authorization, even as critics questioned the legality of a strike on survivors. The Washington Post reported that a second strike was ordered to kill 2 survivors from the initial strike and to comply with an order by Hegseth that everyone be killed. US President Donald Trump said he would not have wanted a second strike on the boat and said Hegseth denied giving such an order. Meanwhile, Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro is rapidly losing options for stepping down under US-guaranteed safe passage, after a brief but consequential phone call with US President Donald Trump last month. The November 21st call came as Washington escalated pressure on Venezuela, including designating the Cartel de los Soles, which US officials say includes Maduro, as a foreign terrorist organization. Maduro has repeatedly denied all criminal accusations, saying the United States is seeking regime change to seize Venezuela's natural resources. On the other hand, Venezuela says President Nicolás Maduro has approved a US migrant repatriation flight days after Caracas claimed comments by President Donald Trump had effectively halted the program. Officials say an Eastern Airlines plane from Phoenix has been cleared to land near Caracas. Nearly 14,000 Venezuelans have already returned on these flights this year. The White House has issued a sharply worded briefing accusing former US President Joe Biden's handling of the Afghanistan withdrawal of creating long-term national security risks for the United States. Officials said the country is now suffering the consequences of those failures, citing recent attacks involving Afghan nationals admitted during Biden's tenure. During the briefing, White House spokesperson Caroline Leavitt claimed that an Afghan national brought into the US under Biden carried out a terrorist attack in Washington, D.C. She said the Biden administration failed to properly vet this foreign terrorist, placing American lives at risk. Israelis Benjamin Netanyahu says a deal with Syria is possible and that he expects a demilitarized buffer zone stretching from Damascus to Mount Hermon. The statement comes after US President Donald Trump's call for Israel to maintain a strong dialogue with Syria. Trump had also invited Netanyahu to the White House in the near future. Russian forces say they have captured Pokrovsk, a strategic logistics hub in eastern Ukraine, along with Vovchansk in Kharkiv. The Kremlin hailed the liberation, though Ukraine has yet to confirm the reports. Russian Chief of Staff announced that Pokrovsk and Vovchansk are under Russian control. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said the news was reported to President Vladimir Putin during his visit to a frontline command center. Videos circulated by Moscow show Russian soldiers marching through the streets of Pokrovsk, raising the Russian flag. Putin congratulated troops on their victory in what Russian officials call Krasnoarmeysk, the city's Russian name. Italy is set to approve a parliamentary decree allowing the continued supply of military equipment to Ukraine. This move is aimed at supporting Kyiv in its ongoing war effort against Russia. Since the start of the conflict in February 2022, Italy has authorized 12 packages of military aid for Ukraine, including advanced air defense systems. At least 12 people, including 3 children, have been killed after a landslide struck 2 boats docked at a river port in central Peru's Amazon rainforest, with dozens more still missing as emergency crews battle harsh conditions to find survivors. The landslide hit at dawn along the Ucayali River, submerging a ferry and severely damaging another passenger vessel carrying teachers, doctors, families and community members. The disaster occurred around 5 a.m. local time as passengers were preparing to disembark at Iparia in the Ucayali region. Pope Leo has ended his Lebanon visit with a strong appeal for Middle East leaders to change course from what he called the horror of war. At a waterfront mass, he urged them to hear their people's cries for peace and pressed for unity after years of conflict and political crisis. Before departing Beirut for Rome, noted he couldn't visit Lebanon's south because it remains in a state of conflict and uncertainty. The Pope renewed his plea for peace. He asked that attacks cease, recalling the devastation of the 2020 Beirut blast. German Foreign Minister Johann Wadephul will visit China from the 8th to the 9th of December, after a previously planned October trip was abruptly cancelled. The visit comes as Beijing works to counter European calls to de-risk from the Chinese economy. Germany, the European Union's largest economy, appears to be aligning with broader EU moves, as the 27-member bloc may push for policy changes to strengthen ties with like-minded trading partners. Apple does not plan to comply with a mandate to preload its smartphones with a state-owned cyber safety app, and will convey its concerns to New Delhi after the government's move sparked surveillance concerns. Sources say Apple does not plan to comply with the directive and will tell the government it does not follow such mandates anywhere in the world, as they raise a host of privacy and security issues for the company's iOS ecosystem. A source said it's not only like taking a sledgehammer, this is like a double-barrel gun. That's all for now. For more updates, visit www.samar.tv. Thank you for watching Samar News.